To be honest, I lived a very hedonistic, I mean, look, I'm covered in tattoos, so you can kind of guess what kind of lifestyle I led. And I hate to obviously, bunch everyone who has tattoos in the same group, but you know what I mean. I lived a very, I'm not gonna like talk too much about it, but drinks, drugs, sex, all of that sort of stuff, going crazy, doing a mad one. And I know it is a sin for me to admit all of this stuff for Allah, but I just want to paint a picture, and I want you to know that if you're currently living that lifestyle, there is another way to go, the call to prayer, the azan. And as soon as I heard it, I felt tingles throughout my whole body. It just felt, it was wild. At the start, when I was contemplating taking my Shahada, saying the Shahada, I was really questioning it, because I was like, how the lifestyle that I live, how am I going to adapt it to live as a practicing Muslim? Because if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it properly. I'm not going to half-ass it. I'm going to try my best, and I wanted to make sure I was doing it with the right intentions. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hi, my name is Mart, and I'm a Muslim. So I really just wanted to sit down, just a simple, pretty unedited video, and just explain my Revert story. It's probably going to be somewhat similar to others, to be fair, but I know that a lot of people like to watch this, and to be honest, the main reason why I'm making it is for other people who were maybe in my situation. You are open to the idea of reverting, you feel like you want to, you are maybe currently learning about it, you have some friends who are Muslim, maybe you don't have any friends, and you just want to hear from a more relatable source of information, rather than a lot of reverts, or people who are thinking of reverting find it hard to relate to people who are born Muslim, and that's understandable. I was somewhat the same. I grew up around quite a lot of Muslims, to be fair, so it wasn't as much of an issue, but I can understand where you come from. But anyway, I'm 25, I live in London, born and raised in London. In terms of ethnicity, I am half Irish, and then the other half, I honestly don't know. I was, I'd say it's Filipino. There might be a bit of Chinese, Indian. Actually, there's definitely a bit of Indian in there. Might be some Chinese and Spanish, but I'm not too sure. I need to do one of those 23andMe test kits or whatever. But yeah, so I grew up Christian. I grew up in a gospel church, actually. Attended Sunday school. Absolutely hated it. I sometimes attended a Catholic church as well. That was for my nan, every now and then when I would stay over at hers. And I attended a Church of England's primary school. So my upbringing was very much focused on Christianity. And I would say, having so much focus on it and not really understanding why am I doing, this and that, I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think the best way to do it is by leading by example, and I didn't feel like I got that in Christianity at all. It didn't really make much sense to me. So as soon as I turned like 10, I think I had the opportunity to stop going to Sunday school, and obviously I took that, and I was basically an atheist for about over 10 years. And to be honest, I lived a very hedonistic, I mean, look, I'm covered in tattoos, so you can kind of guess what kind of lifestyle I led. And I hate to obviously, bunch everyone who has tattoos in the same group, but you know what I mean. I lived a very, I'm not gonna like talk too much about it, but drinks, drugs, sex, all of that sort of stuff, going crazy, doing a mad one. And I know it is a sin for me to admit all of this stuff for Allah, but I just want to paint a picture, and I want you to know that if you're currently living that lifestyle, there is another way to go, for sure. So yeah, so I was early 20s, just living a crazy lifestyle, man. I took a trip to Portugal all by myself. I went and got this tattoo sleeve. I don't know why I've done this, to be honest, man. So yeah, I regret it a lot, obviously, but it's part of me now. I'm not obligated to remove my tattoos, which is good, because that would have cost me probably about £10,000. Anyway, I was in Portugal by myself getting a tattoo sleeve. I couldn't even feel the pain of the tattoo, right? Because I had something just completely wrong with my throat at the time. and it was just so painful, making my throat very, very tight. I couldn't even feel my whole sleeve was done, and I couldn't feel it. It wasn't painful because of this. I went to sleep, woke up early hours of the morning, and honestly, I almost died. Like I almost choked, and a certain series of events happened. I'll quickly try and wrap it up, but essentially, you know, I messaged my dad because I didn't know what to do. I'm in a foreign country. I never thought I'd have to call an ambulance or anything. It was 3 a.m. and he picked up. Like, he read the message and sent me the number instantly. And I look back at that moment, I'm like, that's so weird. Like, you know, obviously, alhamdulillah, like, that happened because I was in so much pain. I felt like I was trying to cry, but I couldn't cry, like, physically. And anyway, I called the ambulance, you know, ring, whatever. They took forever to answer because it was kind of in the middle of nowhere in Portugal. It was in Albufeira, if anyone knows that. But it was like, it was off season, so there wasn't any tourists there. It was like in October, no one's there. So I rung, they didn't pick up. I rang again, and they picked up, and they couldn't speak English. And I was like, at this point, my voice was just messed up. It sounded so funny. Like, looking back, it was just ridiculous. And I could barely breathe because my throat, like, the hole in my throat was probably like, can't even, it was like that, bruv. It was bad. And I had to search on Google Maps where I was, like the apartment I was staying at. That's another thing, I didn't stay in a hotel, so I couldn't get any help from like the lobby or whatever, reception. So trying to get them to come to the right place, they couldn't understand what I was saying. And each time that I was saying it, my throat was getting tighter and tighter. And, you know, I said it maybe 7-8 times, and it got to a point where I was like, I physically, my throat just couldn't open enough to speak. And I was like, I got maybe one try left. And I said it. And the person on the other end was just like, oh. Anyway, they sent an ambulance, came, went to the hospital. You know, I had to have morphine, had to have penicillin, all injections straight into my bottom, in each cheek. But anyway, so that it just went straight into me so that I could actually recover. I was in so much pain, had to have an oxygen mask, and then they sent me home a couple hours later. I woke up the next morning, went to get all of my medication. It was like eight forms of medication, and it was right by the sea. And right after that, I walked all the way to the sea, well, the beach. I found a bench and I sat down, and I just looked into the sky, and I looked into the sea, and I was just like, I felt something. I know it sounds ridiculous, it honestly does. And to be honest, if I hadn't experienced that and someone told me the same story, I'd be thinking like, what are you on about? But it felt different. And ever since that moment, I genuinely thought there must be a higher power, because the events that happened that night, it was just too, like, my dad being awake at that time, he's never awake at that time, and instantly replying with exactly the information that I needed. The hospital not picking up first, and then finally picking up, and then not understanding exactly what I was saying. And then on my last breath, what it felt like my last breath, they understood. And then, you know, all of, yeah, it was just, alhamdulillah. But yeah, that next morning, I just knew there was a higher power. I just knew it. And I turned to Christianity. I turned back to Christianity because it's all that I knew. It's all that I knew. And even, I'm not even going to say it, but I got a certain tattoo, or like my friends will know, got a certain tattoo, and it's related to Christianity, which I need to get removed. But yeah, so then I explored that for a little bit. But once again, it just didn't make any sense to me. It just didn't. You know, the whole, I'm not going to go into too much, but the whole, you know, 3 gods, or like 3 forms of God and that kind of thing, and Jesus being God when, you know, obviously is a prophet, things along those lines, like, you know, the Bible not being written anywhere near the time of these events happening, and they were written by people who weren't even there. Things along those lines. There's a whole bunch. I'm not going to cover it all, just out of respect for, you know, I have a lot of family members who are Christian as well, might watch this, so but yeah, so then at that point, you know, Islam made sense. And just a bit of background, I've always had Muslim friends. I just always thought like, that's, you know, that would never be for me. And then I met a guy called Fahim around the time actually that the whole thing happened. It's crazy thinking about it. Around the time that I was in Portugal, I came back and I just met a brother called Fahim. Still, he's one of my best friends. Like even now, just got married. Alhamdulillah. It was around the time of COVID. It was the restrictions were starting to ease, so we go on walks. And he slowly started teaching me about it. And at the time, you know, I wasn't really like focusing on it, but I was absorbing this information, and it was just interesting because I'd had Muslim friends before, but they never really taught me about Islam. I knew little bits here and there, but he would really, you know, this is a practicing brother. You know, he would tell me a lot of relatable things, and he would word it in a way where it was easy for me to understand. So anyway, this is like a couple years of him doing this, and he's very persistent, but he wasn't trying to force it down my throat, you know. He was very patient. I tell him stories, you know, very haram stories, stuff for Allah. I shouldn't even mention it to him, such a practicing man, but he was very patient, and he led by example. Instead of trying to force it down my throat, he led a life where I was like, wow, this guy he's a remarkable guy. He would make me think, like, why am I doing the stuff that I'm doing? He wouldn't necessarily ask me why am I doing it, but he would make me think about it. And over time, you know, I was getting closer and closer to it. And you know what they say, obviously you take one step towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, he'll make it easy for you, essentially. I know that's not word for word, but I feel like that's what happened. I really do. Alhamdulillah. But yeah, so I would say a couple of years of learning about Islam. Same brother, Fahim, I know he's going to watch this as well. He bought me, it was around my birthday last year, and he bought me a prayer mat and a few other bits, and I just sort of had it for a little bit, maybe a month or so, and then I just took it out and I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna pray. I'm gonna learn how to do it. And I learned how to do it, and honestly I fell in love, and I told him about it. And then, you know, he took me to the mosque. Funny story, the first time he tried to take me to a mosque, the Donny, and I know obviously you should always assume the best, but the Donny at the door, my friend went in, I followed behind maybe like 5-10 seconds. He stopped me and said, oh no, we're closed. And at this time, yeah, I know I'm meant to assume the best, but I had all of my tattoos out, yeah. I had them all out, so I was just like, they don't want me. But, you know, the second time I went to London Central Mosque, I think that's what it's called. It's a place I actually took my Shahada at, and, you know, I heard the call to prayer, the azan, and as soon as I heard it, I felt tingles throughout my whole body. It just felt, it was wild. It was, yeah. Yeah, man, that was special. But I think ever since then, you know, at the start when I was contemplating taking my Shahada, saying the Shahada, I was really questioning it, because I was like, how you know, the lifestyle that I live, how am I going to adapt it to live as a practicing Muslim? Because if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it properly, you know, I'm not going to half-ass it. I'm going to try my best, and I wanted to make sure I was doing it with the right intentions. So, you know, I wasn't doing it for certain perks or whatever. And so, anyway, after many emotional talks with my friends just about certain things, which we can cover in another video if you want to, but I was skim over it for this one, and sort of trialing, you know, praying 5 times a day in halal food, those kinds of things, just to sort of ease myself into it. You know, I finally decided to say the Shahada at home by myself, and then a little bit later, I went to London Central Mosque, and yeah, I took my Shahada, and it was lovely, man. Like, my life has changed. My life has changed a lot. I now, you know, I work out every day. Well, I pray 5 times a day. I get up for Fajr, and right after that, I'm up, innit? I can't go back to sleep, so I'll just go straight to the gym. And that's the one thing, for those of you who are contemplating it, it will improve your life. It will give you some structure. It will give you some discipline. It will give you some purpose. I felt very purposeless. And, you know, at times I still feel like, oh, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. But it really enables you to... I heard someone say, I can't remember who said this, but a lot of these atheists or people in the West always say, you know, there is no God. Everyone has a God. Everyone has a God. Our God is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the people's God in the West is social media, is, I don't know, fashion, is music, is the government, is whatever it is, drugs, alcohol, partying. They're all slaves to that. And why not be a slave, essentially, or submit to a God who actually created you and has given you this life? And that's what I really contemplated. I was just like, why am I going to keep partying, keep doing this and that, and doing all this haram stuff, and live a life where I feel purposeless, I feel lazy, I can't work out because I'm hungover, I act a fool when I'm drunk, all of these things. And now I live a good life, man. I really do. And for those of you who are contemplating it, if you're already contemplating it and you're watching this video, just take that as a sign. There's no compulsion, obviously. You don't have to do it. There's not gonna be anyone who's gonna force you to do it. But if you're already here, it's just a sign. Remember, take one step closer and he'll make it easier for you. Or easier, at least. Just trying to think if there's anything else that I missed out. Obviously, I have other Muslim friends who helped me along the way. 100%. I may as well give them a shout out now. Obviously, Ismail, Firas, Zubair, Moise as well, Shoaib, Aaron. Yeah, I'm just so thankful. So just wanted to share my experience, and hopefully, if you have any questions or anything, or if you're a brother or a sister who's looking to revert, or is considering it, or maybe you have already considered it and you are ready, then just, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. And if I don't know the answer, I can pass on to someone else. But yeah, as I said, I'm very happy that I've reverted, and alhamdulillah, yeah, it's a good life.